So, Tuesday night's 2-0 win over Athletic Club was the second game in a row that showcased Arsenal's new impressive strength and depth this season. And there were three major talking points that I wanted to address after this game, and of course the win over Nottingham Forest at the weekend. The most obvious example of Arsenal's new strength and depth is Arteta's use of Leandro Trossard this season. Obviously the Belgian had to step in a lot last season as a starting striker, number 10, wide player, but as we've now seen in both of these last two games, he's came into the match and made real breakthroughs for Arsenal, obviously setting up a goal against Nottingham Forest and then a goal and an assist against Athletic Club. And I think that's a really good example of how Arsenal's overall squad has just grown in stature. According to Opta, only Bukayo Saka has actually provided more assists than the Belgian winger since he joined the club, which is just quite remarkable. And in many ways, I think particularly in this game and the last one, he proved to be a kind of perfect step in for Martin Odegaard, who went off injured against Forest and didn't play in this game, at the right time of the match. Arsenal were obviously being a bit more combative. They were still trying to kind of tussle with Athletic for control of this match. But Arteta picked the right time to introduce Trossard as a playmaker, and obviously he had an instant impact in setting up Gabriel Martinelli. And I think that's a better example of Arteta being able to use better players off the bench this season. Another obvious example of Arsenal's kind of strength and depth and the manner in which Arteta is able to kind of play with his tactics in game is the manner in which he used his wingers in this match. Madueke and Eze both started either side of Gyökeres in this match, and I thought they worked really well with the Swede. Gyökeres is obviously a fantastic target man. I thought he played really quite well in this game. He moved out wide at times and kind of took up spaces on the flanks, but he also dropped deep and allowed both Eze and Madueke to play off him for much of the game. I think it was really important that he started his front three. Obviously Madueke and Eze are both players who, they've both got fantastic speed, they can take on players, but they're perhaps a little more considered with their passing and with their possession. You know, they can quite happily move up and down the pitch, pass it back and forth. They're maybe not as kind of gung-ho or box to box as other wingers in that Arsenal team. And I think in a sense, it was a game where Athletic Club kind of wanted the match to descend into this kind of slugger boxing match where both teams just went back and forth. Athletic could then kind of fall back on their physicality to try and almost bring Arsenal down to the level, with all due respect to the La Liga side. And I think having Madueke and Eze on either wing, playing kind of careful football, actually worked really well. Then on the flip side, Arteta was then able to introduce someone like Martinelli. Now I like Martinelli, I think he's a great player. He's a very direct player. He loves playing balls over the top or running onto balls over the top, as we saw perfectly well with his exquisite goal. And I think it was really notable that Arteta chose not to start him from the beginning, because if he had started him from the beginning of the match, I think he would have probably played into that box-to-box kind of mentality that Athletic Club were looking to introduce. And as a sense, Arsenal may have struggled to control the game as they went on to do. So I think Arteta did a really good job of starting Eze on that left wing instead of Martinelli, but then also having the option to bring Martinelli off the bench, which obviously led to fantastic results for Arsenal. And it will obviously come as no surprise to Arsenal fans that this is a notable change from last season. Having players who've been brought in the summer move straight into the start 11 and then moving such players like Trossard and Martinelli back to the bench just improves the Arsenal squad overall. I think it's quite telling if you look back at the stats from last season and which players Arteta used the most from the bench. Raheem Sterling was 4th and Alexander Zinchenko was 5th. Now, that's not really a dig at both of those players, but I think that maybe showed the limitations of Arteta's options from the bench. He had a very strong starting 11, but at times that bench just didn't really provide solutions to the problems that he was facing mid-game. And as such, you know, this season we're able to see Arteta, instead of having to turn to someone like Raheem Sterling, he's able to turn to a Trossard, Martinelli, even a Nwaneri, and of course maybe even Dauman as he kind of develops into an exciting young player. Obviously Arteta did have guys like Trossard, Martinelli and Nwaneri in his squad last season, but the significant difference is that these guys were often forced to start from the beginning, and if things weren't quite working in matches, he didn't really have anyone to turn to except for the aforementioned Sterling or Zinchenko. This time we've got Eze, we've got Madueke, we've got Gyökeres in there, and that means that he can then turn to guys like Trossard and Martinelli, who in a sense might be actually better used as impact subs this season. And where Arsenal dropped points last season in big games, for example against Manchester United away where Mourinho had to play up front, or Liverpool away where Trossard had to play up front, they now have a far stronger starting 11 and crucially better options off the bench. And looking ahead to their next game against Manchester City, I do kind of wonder if this now gives Arteta finally the chance to kind of do something a bit more in these big games and perhaps pick up more vital points in the league campaign.